I first visited Bali when I was beginning to pivot away from a career I thought I was going to stick to for life. At the time, I did not think anything else was possible. I got an invitation from a friend who was doing her wellness training there. Join me in Bali for the weekend, she said. And I said yes. I arrived in Denpasar alone and was then greeted by a Balinese driver. Memory is blurry now, but I remember he had a big smile on his face. And the whole time I was thinking to myself, wow, I never knew Balinese people were this friendly, almost too friendly. It was a wonderful trip. And little did I know that trip also marked the beginning of a big shift in my life. In short, I went from being someone who could not live without a plan to slowly, bit by bit, becoming a person who appreciates the ebbs and flows in life. I realized this world has so much to offer when we just let go a little bit and let the universe surprise us with what we never thought was possible. The art of letting go is the first lesson I learned from Bali. This year, I went to Bali again. Last time I stayed for only a weekend at Nusa Penida. I didn't even get to see the main island. But this time I stayed for 2 weeks and was able to truly immerse myself in everything that Bali has to offer. There were even days I didn't have plans as an attempt to get a feel of what living in Bali is like. But what really stood out to me was how friendly Balinese people are still. They are the most hardworking people I've ever met, and they are also the most laid-back and chilled people who do not shy away from showing kindness to any strangers. For example, the villa we stayed at is tucked away in a narrow alley next to houses where local Balinese live. To get in or out, we must walk through the alleyway. In Bali, dogs are sacred animals, so local people think dogs can see and feel what humans can't. And of course, almost every household in Bali has a couple of dogs. For some reason, the dogs of our neighbors were particularly fierce, despite being quite tiny in size. There were times when we were walking back to our villa in the dark, where we couldn't see a thing because the alley was essentially pitch black. The dogs were barking at us to the point we were genuinely scared. We even joked if it's because we carried bad juju. So there's this one time, we were trying to head out. The dogs barked at us again. This time, they were way more intimidating than ever. But lucky for us, one of our neighbors who is a local Balinese was heading out at the same time on his scooter. He stopped and said something to us that we didn't understand. We went on to exchange a few words in broken English and body language because he doesn't really speak English. We pointed at the dogs with terror written all over our face. He gestured to us to hop on. We were not really 100% sure if that's what he meant, because he didn't really say anything further. We hopped on anyway. He went on to drop us off at the end of the alley where it meets a busy street. The whole ride was 5 seconds. And then he left with a big smile on his face as we kept saying, thank you, thank you. So, a big smile is one of the most recognizable expressions of any Balinese that you will come across, including any regular Gojek driver, which is a welcome change because I live in a city where Uber drivers are grumpy by default. And the rest of the trip, I was blessed with countless moments of people just showing me kindness. Like my driver from the villa was the most patient and caring person I've ever met. So an activity ran 2 hours over time. I felt so bad, he ended up waiting for me outside for 2 extra hours. And I kept saying sorry. And he kept saying, it's okay, it's okay. And at one point, he almost had to sit me down and assure me that all is well. He said, "Relax, it's okay. I told my boss already, it's okay." You can imagine how soothing and assuring it was for a stress ball like myself to hear someone telling me to relax, because no one ever tells me that. So, everywhere you go, despite you're essentially paying for all sorts of services, local Balinese will make you feel like you're right at home. It almost feels like they don't really care about taking your money. They go above and beyond just to make sure that you have a good time and are well taken care of. Throughout my trip, I wanted to know more about the Balinese way of living and what they are really thinking and why they are so chilled all the time. And I want to hear from local Balinese about their perspectives instead of Julia Roberts. So I decided to start with my tour guide, Al, who is a young native Balinese born and raised in Bali and never left the island. But I started off the conversation with a rather random question. You know, there's this instant noodles that's coming from Indonesia and it's called Indomie. It has been a global sensation since I was a kid. I'm just wondering, as local Balinese in Indonesia, what do you think about Indomie?
Well, it's just something that I can consume in every day. So, in my opinion, there's nothing special about it. But it just there is new upcoming product called Mi Sedap, which is, in my own opinion perspective, it has more like taste in it.
Flavorful.
Flavorful. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I remember earlier today you made me try it for breakfast as well, and it was so good.
Yeah.
And I remember there were some crunchy bits as well. When did you know that Indomie was super popular globally, and were you shocked?
Well, actually, I was doing hike on one of the biggest volcano in Bali called Agung, and I saw some Singaporean people. They brought a box of Indomie in their luggage, and I was like surprised. How is that like very special to you guys out there?
Can you describe to me what happiness means to you or to maybe the Balinese people that you grew up with?
Right, happiness is like spreading positivity. I mean, in my opinion, my own perspective, I'm happy while I make people happy. So it's like people in general in Bali, we believe in goodness. So spreading positivity, smiles to others, it's very, very important in my life. So by that, I'm very happy and proud that I was born here and I could work here and live here my entire life.
Happiness is when you bring joy to people. That's the definition of happiness to our Balinese tour guide, Al. Throughout our conversation, Al also showed me that the simple joy in life is being grateful about what you already have. He's happy with the simple fact that he's born and raised in Bali. With natural wonders, sacred sites, iconic rice paddies, beaches, food with plenty of flavors and varieties, cute indie boutiques, and spas that are half the price we normally pay in any major city but more than doubled the quality. There's no further explanation needed as for why tourists love the island of the gods. Balinese also love their tourists, not only because more than half of Bali's economy depends directly on tourism. Balinese people genuinely enjoy welcoming people into their home. It gives them immense joy to show the beauty their homeland is blessed with, especially after the global pandemic. Balinese people know more than anyone that being able to welcome tourists cannot be taken for granted.
And the Balinese are very open and they are very hospitable and they do welcome guests and they do enjoy it too. So it's not something forced on them and it's not something that's unnatural to them. In fact, It might be their most favorite activity to show around their beautiful island and their beautiful home to other people.
Just a little over a year since Bali reopens for international travel, an uptick in unruly behaviour among tourists has pushed national and local officials to think of ways to tighten control of foreign tourists in Bali. The Indonesian Immigration Department has also been busy deporting foreigners who have been working illegally on tourist visas or breaking local laws. More and more Balinese locals are also slowly losing their patience and becoming more vocal about problems caused by some tourists who misbehaved on the island. Ravinjay Kukreja, an Indonesian national of Indian ancestry who has lived and worked in Bali for more than a decade, tells us about some of the problems Balinese locals are growing impatient about.
My name is Raviji Kukreja, and I'm based in Denpasar, Bali. I'm currently a PhD candidate at the State Hindu University of Denpasar, and I major in studying religious studies and theology, in particular Balinese Hindu theology. I'm originally from Jakarta, the capital of the country, and I moved to Bali when I was 16, and it's been home ever since. I think some of the problems would be firstly, they are not obeying any traffic laws. And that's really annoying. Not wearing helmets is one thing, but not having a license is another thing. But not wearing any clothes or driving your scooter into the ocean, yeah, I have no idea why they would do that. If it's something you would not do in your own country, why are you doing it somewhere else? And why in Southeast Asia? Like, what's happening here? Why is there this resurgence of I can do whatever I want in a foreign country? And then we also have the problem of, obviously, this is probably the biggest one that I am personally passionate about. Why are tourists disrespecting local culture? Why are they coming into temples or going into sacred sites naked or taking inappropriate photos or doing inappropriate things? Why? Like what made them do something like this? Are they against the Balinese? No, most of them love and say that they respect the land. So what's making them doing these disrespectful activities? That's really what's really disturbing me and a lot of Balinese too, because we are doing such a good damn job welcoming everyone, and we've been doing so for so long. And then you have a bunch of people going to their sacred sites naked, taking inappropriate photos, or going live on Instagram for the sake of followers, or going to sacred temples, cleaning their private parts with holy water, or doing other inappropriate things which are which are just obscene.
The sacred sites, the temples, what do they mean to local Balinese people? Why are they so sacred?
So the local Balinese Hindu philosophy is that God is omnipresent. God is everywhere through his energy. And God manifests himself or herself in many different ways and through many different beings. But his energy is constantly there everywhere. And therefore, everything deserves respect and everything deserves a place. And the Balinese have this, you can say, formula of attaining this balance by respecting one another, respecting fellow human beings, by respecting nature, and by respecting God in sacred places. Sacred places would be places of pilgrimage, places of worship, or amazing phenomena of nature. Like the volcano, for example, would be sacred. The mountains are sacred because that's high above where the gods live. Big trees, large trees, rivers, large waterfalls, banyan trees, large pieces of rock, the ocean, these natural phenomenons, because they are so great and are to be respected and venerated, they are regarded as a place that is sacred, where the gods and the ancestors would come and visit. So there's this place and there's a time for everything. Humans can do as they please and enjoy as much as they want, but there is a particular vicinity and a particular boundary where they can be. And there's a particular place as well for nature and another place for God. And crossing these boundaries is what the Balinese really try not to do, but which the tourists are doing because of their ignorance.
And of course, tourists are not aware of like how much work local Balinese people have to do to clean up after them, after they break the rules and all that, right? So let's say if a tourist posed naked at a sacred site, are there any consequences? How will local Balinese people respond after such incident happens?
So the Balinese believe in two worlds, right? The seen and the unseen. In the seen world, that's the world of the law. That's the world of public indecency, disrespecting other people, going into a place naked, working when you don't have the appropriate visa. That's the seen world. The unseen world is what actually reigns supreme when it comes to mountains, when it comes to sacred rivers and temples. They believe that there are many different creatures that inhabit these places. They might be ancestral deities, or they might be local spirits, ghosts, and goblins that roam around that land and call it a home. The big tree that someone might pose naked to might be home to various different unseen spirits and beings. And the Balinese are very respectful of that and very aware and very conscious that this is their home that should not be disrespected. So, on the seen level, they would obviously deport the tourist. They would definitely make them do a public apology. But on the unseen level, they would do many different sacrifices, many different offerings to then offset and balance that karma and restore that balance again once more. The way they do this would be by having elaborate ceremonies and rituals of cleansing, usually with mantra, with holy water, with coconut water. These offerings are then made to basically reinstate the boundaries of, hey, this is sacred land. This has been misused by a human being. We apologize for doing such a thing. We're now reinstating it once more as a sacred site. Here are some offerings. Kindly accept them and let us again once more venerate and respect this place. And this is basically quite painful, honestly, for a Hindu, for a Balinese to do, because they didn't overstep the boundaries themselves, yet they're the one trying to reinstate that balance once more. It's obviously expensive because you'd have to buy a lot of coconuts, a lot of flowers, a lot of animals for the sacrifice, but that's not what matters. It's expensive emotionally to not be the one that's overstepping the boundary, but then having to pray for someone else who did, and they're our guest. So it's just really painful every time to see someone do that. Especially on mountains, Mount Agung and Mount Batur, the two volcanoes on the island, they are extremely, extremely, extremely sacred. They are the ancestral homes. They are like the Mount Olympus of the Balinese. That's where the gods live. That's where Shiva lives. That's where their entire ancestors all live. And just recently, we had a man posing completely butt naked on top of the sacred peak of Mount Agung. And obviously, the Balinese are defensive. Obviously, then they're not going to permit tourists going up there again, or at least they'll try their best to ensure that that doesn't happen again. It's hard. It's hard to control because we want tourists to be welcome, but at the same time, we don't want them to do these things. And it's hard to really say which tourists will do it and which tourists won't, right? We don't want to judge.
Balinese culture is a source of happiness for locals, and naturally, they will be upset to see tourists disrespected. According to a spokesperson of the Bali Government Tourism Office, destroying Balinese culture means destroying their life, quote unquote. In fact, they take their cultural and religious practices so seriously that there's even a term called ceremony traffic. A ceremony in Bali usually takes the form of a parade. Local Balinese taking part in the ceremonies are dressed in traditional Balinese costumes. As they parade the road, there will always be cars waiting patiently behind them. No cars will attempt to go past the parade at all.
Roads are small in Bali, and sometimes when there is a temple ceremony, they might close up a road for it and provide an alternative. So a temple ceremony that usually happens once in 6 months might take up the road in front of the temple and might block off the road, and therefore you'd have to go around it. That's the first kind. And the second kind of ceremony traffic, which is much rarer, is when when the parade from the temple leaves the temple grounds to head towards another temple or to another mountain or to the sea, for example, the beach for a cleansing. And this doesn't happen often. It happens once in 6 months, probably once in a year.
I really enjoyed it when being stuck in traffic, seeing the parade, walking past my car. I was like, wow, this is something that I've never seen before. And I was so fascinated by how the traffic, the cars behind the parade, they really respected and they really waited for the whole parade to pass. And should I consider myself lucky that I actually came across like two of these ceremonies when I was in Bali? I was only there for about like 2 weeks.
Probably. I guess you were coming to Bali at the same time when the gods were trying to meet you, I guess.
If the entire island is willing to be stuck in traffic and give way to any ceremonies, it is understandable why local Balinese people will be offended when tourists violate or pose naked at sacred sites. On top of disrespecting Balinese culture and violating sacred sites, another problem that sparks outrage is dangerous driving among tourists. Ketut Widiatawan, a Balinese content creator who goes by Defried Banana on TikTok, with over 640k followers on the platform, has taken to social media to highlight tourist behavior with his comedy skits.
So my name is Ketut Widi Artawan. I'm 33 years old. I'm from Bali, Indonesia. I'm originally from the north of Bali. It's called Kayu Putih. In the north of Bali, it's called Singaraja. And my village is called Kayu Putih. And it's only like 5 minutes from Lovina Beach. But I have a stepmom from Seminyak. So I grew up in Seminyak.
Yeah, and I also know that some of the content you make might be highlighting a little bit the funny behaviors of tourists. I'm just wondering if there are some larger issues or problems that you also highlight with your content.
Of course, in the beginning, I was just doing accent, but for me, it's like, okay, I want to do something else. And then, after the corona, like so many things happening in Bali, there was like a lot of now I'm sure you also heard a lot of news also, how the tourists behave in Bali. And this is why I'm like try to not try to bully it or not try to, I'm just doing something is what's happening in Bali. I want to tell people, like, for example, like I'm driving with a motorbike, no helmet, and then like all doing this and that. This is more like for me, it's like, how can I create a message to people that is not good? But at the same time, I want to make it like fun. So people doesn't get bored of like, if I would just say something like, hey, use a helmet. Don't drive like this. People get like, who the hell are you? What you trying to tell us. But if I would do something like make it as a comedian, people like it.
Coming up after the break, we'll hear more from local Balinese about why the tension between tourists and locals in Bali are making headlines and what they want the world to know. Stick with us.
What does being Asian American really mean? Many of us struggle with this feeling of being caught between two worlds.
Some days we don't want to be Asian American.
And I identify as American born Chinese.
Sometimes, depending on the news of the day, yes, I'm an American too.
I'm Sarah Mises Tan, host of Mid Pacific, a new podcast from Cap Radio. Join me as we define Asian American on our own terms. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
But of course, car accidents that involved tourists did not just begin to happen after the pandemic when international travel resumed. I also wondered what really triggered the heightened tension between local Balinese and foreign tourists.
Back in the days, I'm sure there's also something happening like that. But then, social media is getting super big in Indonesia or Bali. And of course, people now see more like Instagram. So people are following those kind of news from Instagram and all that. But back in the days, not everyone has a smartphone, so not everyone can just see what's going on social media. But the thing is that, of course, now people are starting also to think like, at the beginning was just like, okay, people are coming here getting drunk and some of them driving arrogant. But I think at this some point, like a lot of people are like realizing it because it's like, oh my God, this is getting more worse. Now people like the tourists that come here, some of them, they don't know how to drive motorbike and they just maybe learn it or like one time here and then they're starting to use a big bike. So we have a lot of news that some tourists are actually died because of the motorbike crash because they're like they're driving in the night, they don't know how to drive, and then maybe they have a little drink, and then yeah, they just lay down on the side of the road. And this is why the fellas like we have to do something, like we have to talk about it, because it's not just because of their accident, because some of them are driving crazy. Like for example, me, why I talk about it also, or I make a video about it, because it's not about me, not only me. I care also about other people's around me. What if this person just drive into, for example, my girlfriend, for example, while she's like driving slowly, and then this person doesn't know how to drive and just going crazy. So of course, like also with a lot of Balinese also think the same. Like, okay, this is getting too much. Like we have to talk about it. Like we can't just leave them doing whatever they want, because could put other people in dangers.
As pointed out by Ketut, social media has made all sorts of tourist behavior spread faster and become more visible to the world. While it is a really good tool that inspires and informs travelers about what a travel destination has to offer, and subsequently empowers them to come up with their own itineraries and bucket lists, it also means behaviors that actually disrespect local cultures stand a chance of becoming viral or even a trend. The rise of independent tourism also exacerbates the problems.
I think what really sparked the entire outrage initially is people posting it online. Obviously, social media, having everything published and having everything done independently by people, that has really made a huge difference. Initially, it was the Balinese showing around their home, but now it's foreigners coming to Bali doing everything by themselves, right? Taking photos, publishing directly. Most of them don't really interact with locals. They don't really ask permission. They don't really ask questions. They just immediately do things as they would themselves here on the island. This is very different from how the concept of a guest would be, at least to the Balinese, where there would be a host welcoming someone, providing them with what they need, and answering their questions and taking them on adventures. And this independent tourism really allows you to obviously explore Bali to yourself, but that's not really the concept of you being a guest in someone's home. It's you kind of just entering and doing as you please.
When asked about why there has been heightened attention about tourist behavior in Bali, Bulan, a half Balinese, half Chinese marketing professional who was born and raised in Sanur, Bali, says the more relaxed tourist visa policy could be one of the reasons.
I would say the past 1.5 years that we've seen an uptick in this irrational behavior. But I think if you want to really trace when it all started, I think it has to do with the free visa policy that was launched in 2016. So because of this, yes, it's easier to enter Indonesia, but that also lifted the filter. So literally anyone whoever booked the ticket can come to Indonesia and to Bali. So since then we have seen some funny and irrational behaviors, and that started the conversation of like, oh, is it better that we welcome everyone to our island, or should have we not filtered them out? Since then, there has been one or two cases every year. There has been robbery. There has been, accidents on the roads. They think they can ride motorbikes like the locals, whereas the locals have been riding motorbikes since they were what, 14, 15. So they have this innate instinct. I always joke in Bali, when you drive with your eyes, you drive with your ears, you drive with your heart. In Bali, all your senses have to be awake, you have to be fully present. But because the locals have been doing it for so long, they are so in tune. They know when to turn, they know when to stop, etc. And I think the tourists think they can also do that. But in fact, it's like pilot practicing, like you have to clock in certain number of hours, flying hours, to reach that level. So I can see that they want to own the road, or they want to drive like locals, but they can't, and they probably shouldn't too.
Another problem that frustrates the locals is tourists working or offering business services illegally on the island. Some of the worst offenders, according to some Bali meme pages on social media, are the bule, an Indonesian term used by local Balinese to describe foreigners or non Indonesian nationals, especially Caucasian. The livelihoods of local Balinese people can be threatened if the bule continue operating their own economies. In fact, when I approached some local Balinese to speak on this episode, some of them declined because they said there's a bullying culture in popular tourist towns like Canggu. They said if they speak publicly about the bule behavior, they worry it might impact their business. Some of their business social media pages were already targeted by haters or bule after they spoke with the media. But on the other side of the equation, foreign tourists and expats on the island are also saying they cannot be solely blamed for every single problem that takes place in Bali. There are expats who have been living on the island for over a decade and care about the island as much as local Balinese do, so they point out that it's not fair to generalize.
Balinese people also, or Indonesian people, are hardworking people, and we don't make like so much, you know what I mean? Like some countries are making much, but here's we don't. Even if we work from 8 to 6, we still make really like low salary. So of course, I hope that also tourism that comes to Bali that really holiday just go for holiday here, not like work here as illegal, because it's a lot of happening. I'm sure you also hear in the news a lot, about people are coming here, they're opening a business and they don't even have a right paperwork, and for me, for example, I'm a bit pissed about it because I have a small business too. For me now, it's like, I feel like we're competing, not competing with the local, but we're competing with like Western people or European people that opening up illegal business because for them it's more easier. For them, they know how to use social media, they know how to use on the website, but some of the us, we don't know that much like that. So they offer more those kind of package on their social media. So we don't know anything about it until we found out like, hey, how come there's like a guy from this country like teaching surfing, for example? How can that be possible? If they want to come here, and like they want to make a business and they do it properly and also they employ local, we are more than happy. But if also they're doing illegal and then they're coming here, they're also teaching, of course it pisses us off too as local.
While traveling there, I also noticed that tourists and local Balinese people have a huge disparity in lifestyles. Unlike tourists, Balinese locals do not start their days with an acai bowl, a personal training session. On their days off, they also don't lounge all day at a beach club. In fact, many of these activities that happen at prime locations on the island might even appear to be quite unaffordable to the locals. I asked our Balinese sources what Balinese people really think when they see tourists experiencing Bali in a way that they themselves never got to.
I personally find it entertaining to watch. I mean, I don't take these things too seriously because I think everyone should live the lifestyle that they want as long as it doesn't harm us. I think we're fine. There's a lot that we can learn as well. Like even Jakartans. When they come to Bali, my Jakarta friends they follow such a strict regime based on Instagram. They would go to have coffee at Revolver, sunset at Potato Head, and then the next day go to Safaya and then have lunch at Kimsu and this and that. So for me, it's entertaining to watch. And in a way, I'm glad they do it because I get to experience it with them as well. Because as a Balinese, like you said, we don't follow the same lifestyle. We take sunsets for granted. So unless my Jakarta friends come and drag me to see a sunset in Potato Head, I probably wouldn't. If it's up to me, I would just stay at home. So I just take it the lighter sides, and at the same time, maybe their lifestyle also fuel the economy. Those achai balls pay for the operations of someone's cafe and employment.
Taking a step back, some of the current tourism trends in Bali are inspired by the Hollywood representation of the island. The most famous example will be the movie Eat, Pray, Love, starring Julia Roberts. I ask what local Balinese people think of the movie.
I choose to see the positive things. I think they highlight the culture, the nature, the beauty of people whether it's the correct representation or not, I don't think a movie is the right way to judge anyway. I mean, if we were to judge Russians by how they are played in Hollywood movies, then everyone is a bad guy, you know? So I think we should be wise enough to not use a movie as a representation. What it does is bring Bali into the international map of destination. So it gives the awareness, it piques the interest.
When we visit a new place, it is important to let go of our pre-existing conditioning and mindset. And most importantly, don't enforce our values, cultures, or customs onto local communities, because most of the time, they don't do things our way. And that's the beauty of traveling. There's so much we don't know, and there's never one right way to do anything. It forces us to go with the flow. When the flight is delayed, there's really nothing we can do about it. And when we don't have Wi-Fi, we just need to find ways to entertain ourselves with what's around us. This is also roughly the philosophy of the Balinese way of living. Why are Balinese people so chilled?
I think it's the island mentality. And secondly, I think it's also because we believe in higher power, that we believe that your future or your life is already planned or mapped out by gods out there. So you don't have to worry, because if you don't get what you want, you may get it later, just in a different way. And third, I think it's also because we believe in karma. So if someone does something bad to you, you just leave it out to the universe, the karma will pay it back. And I did a 7 days meditation course last year. It was a silent meditation, and at the end of the like on the 7th day, my teacher was saying something along the line of there are only 2 places in the world where they have special energy, and one of them is Bali. The other one is Machu Picchu. So apparently beneath the island there's a big source of energy, and because of that, the karma turnover is very quick in Bali. And that was not the first time I heard that, because I kept saying like, oh yeah, if you do something bad in Bali, you get it back quickly. So by surrendering it or letting it go for the karma to work itself out, I think you live your life more chilled because you know you're not in control.
When I was researching for this episode, I learned a lot about Bali's traditions. One of the occasions I find so beautiful is called Nyepi, Balinese Day of Silence. And Nyepi this year fell between March 22nd and 23rd. Nyepi marks the beginning of the new year in the Hindu faith, requiring everyone on the island to stay inside their homes, hotels, or villas for a full 24 hours, with no noise, light, work, or travel allowed. It's a complete shutdown of the streets and a reminder to pause and reflect.
So the day before Nyepi, we call it Pengerupukan Day. That's where we have a city-wide parade of ogo-ogo. Ogo-ogo has this giant papier-mâché that symbolizes demons. So it's always in the form of demons. Each banjar or each community has to make their own ogo-ogo, and that's a community project. So mostly boys of 8 to 20 something, they got together, they made this giant, let's say, dolls. It's weeks long project. Everyone who live in that community have to chip in. And then on the evening of that Pengerupukan Day, you will have to burn the effigies, the dolls. So that symbolizes getting rid of evil spirits. And then on the Nyepi Day itself, that's when you turn off all the lights, no sound, minimize your activities. It's supposed to be the day of meditation. So where you really reflect, do nothing. Few years ago, they even managed to shut down TV, satellite, and mobile phone, which I found really good. On this day, airport is also closed. It's the only place in the world where we can close an airport for a day. Hospitals remain open, so police and doctors still work in case of emergency. And the local communities will send out, again, mostly boys, to walk around the neighborhood to make sure that nobody goes out. So you're not supposed to step out of your house on this day. This is the day where you really make quality time with your family. I usually just spend it reading or catching up on things I like to do. The third day is when you do your cleansing. So to welcome the new year, you go to the beach for a purification. In hindsight, I think everyone should experience Nyepi at least once because it will surprise you how much you appreciate the silence. This year, I read in the news that there were some tourists who did not know and chose to step out and surf.
Wow, they were probably just thinking, wow, the beach is very empty today.
Perfect.
I agree with Bulan. Everyone should experience Nepi at least once in life, or even dedicate a day during the year to doing nothing in silence. This is a unique cultural experience that showcases the spiritual and philosophical values of the Balinese people. It is a reminder that in the hustle and bustle of our life, taking time for silence and reflection can bring us a sense of peace and connectedness with ourselves and the world around us. As we wrap up this episode, I ask our Balinese friends to each share a nugget of wisdom or deliver a message they simply want the world to know.
Definitely, wherever you go to, wherever you visit, whichever culture that you are trying to explore when your next travels, just be mindful that it's not just an object for you to explore. Just be mindful that it is someone's culture, that it is extremely meaningful. It's so hard sometimes for us to imagine that the world that we live in every day is objectified by another, but in reality, it is. We just live in many different worlds in one tiny little planet. So it's just extremely important that the next time when you want to go on your travel and your next adventure, just be mindful that your experiences and what you're aware of does have limitations. And there are different worlds out there completely foreign to you. And you should be respectful of it.
And one of my biggest dream is to see the snowflakes before I die at least once. So I mean, I don't put a lot of pressure on myself about what I wanted in life, but if I could, then I would make it one day. But right now, I'm still like working on it. I work in every day as a tour guide, as a driver. Who knows, one day I'll make it through. But I mean, still, I'm just enjoying the journey instead of dreaming up the destination. So who knows, I might be able to be reaching my destination one day without any pressure. Just let it be as long as you fight for it. No pressure. The most important thing in life is like enjoying the journey instead of like dreaming a lot about this destination. You never know you're gonna make it through or not. I'm meeting you today is one of the bless that God has given for today. We made this conversation.
And also in Bali, I think there are different ways to measure success or happiness. Money is not the most important or the not the top of mind. Unlike people in the city, you measure success by materials, how much you earn, what bags you wear, where you live, what you drive. In Bali, you will find so often someone who looks so normal, so unassuming, turns out to be very wealthy because we measure wealth in a very different way. We measure success in a very different way too. So, how you become important in the society is by contribution. How much do you give back? How much have you helped your neighbors? How much have you contributed to the local temple? These are not the things you can see from, your rings, your clothing, what you drive.
To be a Balinese, yeah, I'm kind of proud too. If, for example, like if I go travel somewhere in other countries in Europe, right? If I would say, like, for example, one time somebody asked me, like, oh, where you from? I'm from Indonesia. They're like, Indonesia? I was like, yeah, Indonesia. I was like, oh. I was like, when I said, Bali, I was like, oh, yeah, Bali. So actually, people know more Bali than Indonesia. They think like we're like another country or something, because especially a lot of people come want to live in Bali, like other people, Western European people want to live here. So I'm have to be proud of to be Balinese. I'm born and raised here. Life is easy here. The food is cheap also. Life is not like, you have to do this like, oh, if you don't do this, you're gonna be fucked up in your life. Here is more like, okay, yeah, that shit doesn't happen, no problem. We have a family. Still gonna be like, you come home and you're not gonna be starving or something like that.
Before we go, can you teach our listeners one Balinese phrase?
I'll probably teach you one of the most polite word to say if you would like to appreciate someone doing something nice to you is put your hand together like this and say suksama.
Suksuma.
Suksama is like the most polite way to say thank you, even to elder or even to younger people. People will appreciate that so much.
If you meet people, you can say like Om Swastiastu. This is means like hello, like how are you? Or like you can use when you're entering to someone's house, for example, that you don't know, you always say like hello, Om Swastiastu.
Ya sudah, which means so be it. It means like, okay, I let it go. Say you didn't get your job, the job that you want, and you said, ya sudah, ya so be it. Or someone broke up with you, you said, ya sudah. It's almost like, screw this. No, I'm just kidding. Like, just letting go.
Yasuda. Once again, Bali is teaching me yet another lesson about letting go. That's it for this episode of Proudly Asian. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram at proudly.asian for more content. We are on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. Leave us a 5-star review on wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for tuning in and signing off for now. I'm Isabel Wong.